Emperor Gaylor walked slowly through the dimly lit hallway, his every step echoing with a metallic clang as his talons hit the floor. He glanced around, his mandibles trembling with obvious distaste. The alien architecture that surrounded him was cold and foreign, and each sound only emphasized that he was deep within a construct created by an alien mind. His thoughts were filled with discomfort and unease, unable to shake the feeling of being in hostile territory. The aliens guiding him stopped after a few moments, and before him, the cold metallic doors slid open with a soft hiss. Inside the room was a simple setup, a table and 2 chairs. One was designed for him, its familiar contours shaped for his unique anatomy, while the other was crafted for the strange form of the aliens he reluctantly had to meet. His mandibles twitched as he took his seat, the unsettling memory of why he was here weighing heavily on him. His eyes, all 4 of them, immediately spotted the piece of parchment on the table, and a wave of anxiety rippled through his core. His heart skipped as he remembered what that piece of paper represented, a treaty that could change everything. He hadn't been seated for long before the doors opened once more. In stepped a human, a female, or a woman as they called them. Gaylor's eyes flickered as he studied her. Unlike most of the other humans he had encountered, this one bore no armor, no weapons, and no sign of military power. Her uniform was modest, reflecting a dedication not to warfare but to knowledge, law, and diplomacy. It was unsettling in its simplicity. Emperor Gvar, the woman's voice reached his ears, a gentle series of barking noises. His translator quickly converted the alien sounds into his own language, though the oddity of it remained. "You must be Ambassador Talina," Gaylor replied, bowing his head in the customary greeting of his people. The ambassador responded in kind, moving cautiously to the table before sitting down. Her movements were slow, deliberate, as though she were constantly considering her actions. "I am," she said softly. "I hope your transport was accommodating." Gaylor tried not to let his irritation show. "It was. Your aesthetic decor, however, leaves much to be desired." Talina gave a small nod. "This is a military vessel, Emperor. In other circumstances, this meeting would take place aboard a diplomatic ship. Alas, that's not the case." She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the cold, hard surface of the table. "Would you care for some refreshments?" Gaylor's mandibles flared with impatience, his body bristling with tension. "I'd rather get this over with, if you don't mind, Ambassador." Her gaze narrowed slightly as her tone deepened. "Are you sure about that, Emperor? Do you truly understand what will happen once you sign that treaty?" A chill ran down Gaylor's spine as his stomach twisted inside him. "I wouldn't be here otherwise," he said firmly. "I've memorized every line of that document. Yes, human, I know what it means." Talina sighed, leaning back thoughtfully. "Let me rephrase my question, then. Do you truly understand what will happen?" Gaylor's eyes fluttered shut, his body trembling. He had studied their history, their brutal conflicts, and their staggering achievements. He knew what humanity had done to the Borai. "Yes," he whispered. "I know what you did to the Borai." Talina's voice dropped, filled with a quiet, bitter edge. "The Borai," she repeated, almost hissing the word. "May I tell you a story, Emperor?" Gaylor sighed, his frustration barely contained. "It won't change my decision." She smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "I think you need to understand more about us than what your data packet could ever explain." "What more is there to know?" he snapped. "You slaughtered the Borai. Isn't that enough?" His exoskeleton quivered, his body still not fully recovered from the shock of such information. Talina's expression softened, though the shadows of deep pain were clearly visible in her eyes. "We did," she admitted after a heavy pause. Silence hung between them until Gaylor gave a small nod, urging her to continue. "When humanity first reached the stars, we were afraid," she began. "We expected to be seen as monsters, barbarians, perhaps even less than that. We imagined countless outcomes. Perhaps we'd be the first intelligent life, or maybe we'd meet a mindless hive. Would there be war, diplomacy, peace? We had no way of knowing. Gaylor was stunned by her words. He couldn't imagine a species so complex and chaotic that they could entertain so many possibilities. What species could dream up so many different outcomes? He asked, baffled. Humans could, she replied quietly, a solemn smile playing on her lips. We were certain that when we met advanced alien life, they would have moved past primitive ideas like religion. We thought logic and science would reign supreme. She shook her head slowly, her expression darkening. We were wrong. Gaylor was speechless, his mind racing to comprehend what she was saying. How could you think that? Her smile was bitter now. We thought that embracing logic meant discarding belief. But when we met the Stellar Forum, we found the opposite. Religion wasn't something to be outgrown. It was the very foundation of every species we encountered. As Talina spoke, Gaylor's mind reeled. He had never considered such things. The idea that a species could expect religion to vanish in the face of progress was utterly foreign to him. But Talina wasn't finished. Her voice grew quieter, heavier, as she recounted the grim encounter with the Borai. Gaylor listened, his heart's aching as she described the holy war that had claimed 5 billion lives. The horror of such senseless death weighed on him like a leaden cloak, suffocating him. They hated us, Talina whispered, her voice trembling with old rage. They saw our religions as impure, our faith fractured. And so they sought to wipe us out. We tried to reason with them, but in the end, we had no choice. Gaylor closed his eyes again, his body heavy with the knowledge of what humanity had endured, and what they had become in response. I envy your people, Emperor, Talina said softly, breaking the silence. Gaylor opened his eyes, surprised to see sincerity in her gaze. Your faith, your unity. It's something we could never achieve. Do you understand what will happen once you sign that treaty? Gaylor looked down at the parchment, the weight of his decision settling over him like a shroud. I understand, he whispered. I will carry this burden for my people, no matter the cost. With that, he took the quill and signed the treaty, hoping, desperately, that he was making the right choice.